there, and welcome to our very first video lesson. So if you can, make sure you have paper, pencil, a notebook, or a spiral-bound notebook, 3-ring binder, something to keep all your notes organized. If you do and you're ready to roll, excellent. If not, push pause, go grab your supplies. Now for those of us who are ready, go ahead and write at the top of your page our title, 1-1, Order of Operations. Put your name in that top right-hand corner and today's date. Okay, and the very first thing we're going to have for our learning target is I am learning to use the order of operations to evaluate expressions. So remember, while we write out our learning target, if you need to, you can always pause it to write something down and then push play when you're ready, or you can rewatch or just rewind it a little bit. So our very first thing we're going to start out with today is a power. So a power has two parts, a base and an exponent. So it kind of looks like this right here. We have a to the b power. So a would be our base because he's the big number. Then b is our exponent because he's the little number up top. And it says the exponent tells you how many times to use the base as a factor, which means we're going to multiply. Oh, it jumped on me. There we go. So exponent. Now, for our very first examples, all I want you to do is write EX, for example, and then a 1 below it. We're given 2/3. So since 2 is our base, and our exponent is 3, that 3 tells us we're going to multiply 2 by itself 3 times. So 2 times 2 times 2. So 2 times 2 is 4, and 4 times 2 is 8, and we're good. Example 2, we're given 4 to the 5th power. So that's actually, if you remember, your 4 times 4 times 4 times 4 times 4. So that's really big. It's a little bit of a lot to kind of think through. So as far as it goes, you can just use a calculator on Desmos to do that. I'll show you real quick. Let me clear this out real fast so we can show you. So first thing is we have 4. So everybody hit 4. And then your a to the b power. So it gives you that little exponent, and then 5. And then we hit enter. Oh, hopefully you hit 5 and enter instead of backspace. So 4 to the 5th power is 1,024. So 1,024. And we're good. Our example 3 is 10 to the 7th power. I love 10s being raised to a power because that exponent tells you how many times you're going to multiply it by itself, but also tells you how many zeros we're going to get. So we get 1 and then 7 zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And if you don't trust that, you can always go back to Desmos, put in there 10, and then a to the b power, and then 7, enter, count how many zeros you got. You got 3, 6, and then 1 extra makes 7. Alright, now our last one, 4. We have 2/3 to the 3rd power. So for a fraction, you just raise the numerator. So we're going to do 2 to the 3rd power, which we already have over here was 8. Over, and then we're going to do the same thing to the denominator. 3 to the 3rd power. So 3 times 3 times 3 gives us 27. But if you don't enjoy fractions, if you want to see if Desmos can do it, it sure can. So first thing, right here's your parentheses button, so parentheses. Then over here's your fraction button, fraction. 2, I'm going to click down here for my 3. And now you have to come outside the parentheses, so click all the way to the right. Hit your A to B button again for your exponent. Put in there 3. And it shoots you out a decimal. Our problem's a fraction, so our answer needs to be a fraction. So we hit this button right here to convert it to a fraction. And we get 8/27. If we go back to what we did, we got 8/27. So we're good. Now that we refreshed our powers, we're going to move on to the order of operations. So write that out for me. Order of operations is the process used when simplifying expression. You need to perform the operations. And in math, our operations are add, subtract, multiply, and divide in the correct order. Now for our order of operations, most of us keep up with that order by saying it's PEMDAS. So P-E-M-D-A-S. So PEMDAS, or please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. So however way you remember, make sure you keep up with it. So the very first letter we have in our very first step is P. P stands for our parentheses. I always like to say it's your grouping symbols because it's anything that's grouped together. So it is a parenthesis, a bracket, a brace, anything that's put together in a group. Now for our example, write this out for me. We got 10 minus 16 plus 9 divided by 5 squared times 2 plus 7. And if you notice, we have parentheses right here, so we do that step first. Write 10 minus 16 plus 9 is 25. And because there's nothing else happening directly beside the parenthesis on the front or the back, I'm just going to drop it down without the parenthesis now. Divided by 5 squared times 2 plus 7. So our second step in our order of operations is exponents. And that's why we just reviewed our powers to make sure we're all good with exponents in our order of operations. So if you go back through this second step, we have an exponent here. We have 5 squared, so that's what we got to do next. So we're going to say 10 minus 25 divided by 5 squared is also 25, so it's 5 times 5, times 2 plus 7. Awesome. Now our next part is M and D. If you notice, I color-coded those as the same color because that's the third step altogether, so it's multiplication and division. So we multiply and divide. And we know which one to do first by saying which one comes first, left to right. So do what comes first. Left to right. So the same way you read a book. So if you look at this example from left to right, we have a division symbol and multiplication. But because the division symbol's first, left to right, we're going to do that first. So we're going to do 25 divided by 25. So we're going to drop down 10 minus 25 divided by 25 is 1. We drop down our times 2 plus 7. And we're still not done with step 3 because we still have a multiplication symbol, so we got to do that part next. So we're going to do our 1 times 2. So we're going to get 10 minus 1 times 2 is 2 plus 7. Now for our last step, 4. Same thing as addition, the same thing goes for addition, subtraction as for multiplication and division. We're going to add or subtract, all in the fourth step. Hopefully your handwriting's prettier than mine right there. And once again, we're going to do what comes first. Left to right. Okay. And once again, we have 10 minus 2 plus 7. And because that 10 minus 2 comes first, we do that first. 10 minus 2 is 8. Drop down our plus 7, and 8 plus 7 is 15. And we're set. Those are our steps to the order of operations, PEMDAS. So our very first example of this set, which is example 5 total. So EX, didn't leave myself enough room for that. So EX, example 5, we have 6 minus 2 cubed divided by 2. So our very first step of the order of operations is P for parentheses, and I have parentheses. I have 6 minus 2 there. So 6 minus 2 is 4, and because that 4 is being raised to the third power, I'm going to have to drop down my parentheses and put the third power there so I don't forget it, and then divide by 2. After P comes E for our exponents. I think I got my colors off, did I? Yeah, it's red, P, E for parentheses. Now, E is our exponents, so 4 to the third power is our exponents, so it's 4 times 4 times 4, which is 64. Then we drop down our divided by 2. Next step is our multiplication and division. And for this one, we only have division left, so 64 divided by 2 is 32. And the last 2 steps we'll see later on is add and subtract. So those are our 4 steps for our order of operations. So example 6, we have 2 to the 4th power minus 1 over 3. Once again, we start off with parentheses. There's no parentheses, so we're good. E is exponents. I do have an exponent. I have 2 to the 4th power here in my numerator. So 2 to the 4th power is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, which gives us 16. minus 1 over 3. Now, for this part, we have to fully simplify our numerator before we can worry about multiplication or division yet, because I know some of you all know that fraction bar means divide, but we're not finished with that numerator. So we're going to have to now add or subtract. So 16 minus 1 is 15, all over our 3. And lastly, that fraction bar means to divide, so 15 divided by 3 gives us 5. So remember, when your order of operations problem is written as a fraction, you have to complete the whole numerator and whole denominator before you worry about that fraction bar. Now, our next one has is example 7, and it's 5 times 7 minus 4 squared divided by 2. So once again, first step is to check for parentheses and grouping symbols. This one doesn't have any. So now we're going to go on to E for exponents. We have exponents here, 4 squared, so 5 times 7 minus 4 squared is 16 divided by 2. Alright, so exponents taken care of. Next step is multiply and divide. So if you notice, we have multiplication and division. We do which one comes first from left to right. So 5 times 7 is 35. Drop everybody else down. And now we're good for multiplication. We'll do our division next. So we'll drop down our 35 minus 16 divided by 2 is 8. And now the last part for our addition and subtraction is to say 35 minus 8, which is 27. And we're all good for that one. Now the last part we're going to look at today is substitution. So everybody make sure you write this out with me. So substitution, it says you evaluate an algebraic expression by replacing each variable with a given number. So the key word there is we're going to replace. So we're by replacing a variable with a given number. Then simplify the expression using the order of operations. I have a typo here because it says, what is the value, and it should be, of the expression for x equals 5 and y equals 2. So example 8, we have x squared plus x minus 12 divided by y squared, and it tells us that x is 5 and y is 2. So every time I see an x, I can replace that x with 5 because that's the given value for x. So I can substitute it or replace it. So x squared is now going to be 5 squared plus, once again, that x becomes 5. Then I'm going to drop down my minus 12 divided by, and now my y here, it says y is 2. So I'm going to replace that y with 2, and it'll be 2 squared. So order of operations kicks in. I don't have any parentheses, so we move on to exponents. So I have 5 squared, which gives me 25, plus 5 minus 12 divided by, and I can go ahead and actually do this exponent too, so 2 squared is 4. Now for our next portion, we're going to divide. So our division comes next before we are allowed to add or subtract. So we get 25 plus 5 minus, and now 12 divided by 4 is 3. And last step, so we can do 25 plus 5 is 30 minus 3, and 30 minus 3 is 27. So we're all good. And our very, very last example, example 9, has x, y being squared. So once again, we know x is going to be 5, and we know y is going to be 2. But because they're side by side like that, we have to remember that means they're being multiplied. So we have to do x times y. So first thing, we said x was 5 times, we said y was 2, and the whole thing's being squared. So 5 times 2 is in parentheses, so we got to do that part first. 5 times 2 is 10. And then drop down my exponent squared. And then my second step for exponents is to square the 10. So 10 squared is 100. And I don't have any multiplication, division, addition, or subtraction after that, so we're done. And that concludes this video. So as you go to start today's practice work, make sure you follow all your steps and show all your work as you go throughout the assignment. And please keep all of this well organized together, either in a 3-ring binder or a spiral bound notebook. And we're all done. Thank you.